morning, everybody. 7 o'clock here in the UK. Very welcome to spend your breakfast with us here at Sky News. As the race to get people out of Kabul continues, this morning we'll ask whether the UK's newly announced resettlement programme for Afghan citizens goes far enough. The Home Secretary Priti Patel says the UK is doing everything possible to support those in need. She's here in the studio in just a moment. Then at 8:20, General Sir Nick Carter, the head of the British military, will also be here, giving us his view on how the Taliban was able to stage its takeover. It's Wednesday, the 18th of August. Flown to safety, more evacuation flights arrive from Kabul as human rights groups criticise government plans to resettle 20,000 Afghan citizens.
I'm here at RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire, where another flight landed last night.
Back to the benches, MPs to return to Parliament this morning, 3 days after the Taliban took to the Afghan capital. Senior Taliban leaders return to Afghanistan from exile in Qatar as talks continue over how the new government will function.
The Taliban is trying to present a new image to the world, promising women's rights and amnesty for opponents. But does the global community believe them?
Good morning. The weather across the UK and Ireland then rather cloudy, cool with some drizzly rain, but there will be some sunny spells as well. I'll bring you all the details through the morning.
Let's get straight to it, should we? The Home Secretary is with me here in the studio, of course, Priti Patel. Tell us about this resettlement programme.
Good morning, Kay. So this is absolutely about our commitment to people in Afghanistan who are vulnerable in light of what we're now seeing with scenes on the ground. So this is effectively a new humanitarian route, a resettlement scheme that obviously is coming in addition to the work that we are doing right now to remove Afghan nationals who've worked with our armed forces and done all sorts of incredible work alongside the British government over the last 20 years. So this route will, in the first year, we are speaking first of all about the first year, will bring approximately 5,000 people from Afghanistan to the United Kingdom. We're working through details, the logistics, third-party partners that we'll be working through, and the real details of that will come together over the next few days.
Does 5,000 this year reflect accurately the scenes that we've seen at Kabul airport?
Well, I think it's important, Kay, to ensure that we have a scheme that will deliver. And we have to think very carefully about the practicalities. Currently already, and you would have heard from my colleague Ben Wallace, Ben and I have been working, the Defence Secretary and I have been working very close on bringing back, resettling those Afghan nationals who've worked alongside British forces.
We'll talk about that separately.
So that's one scheme, and that's around 5,000 people.
We'll talk about that separately.
In fact, that's going to be bigger. So importantly, with the new humanitarian route that we are announcing today, we have to ensure that we have clearly all the support structures across the United Kingdom. So you would have seen from our announcement, we'll be working with local councils around the country, with the devolved governments as well, to ensure that we can support those people. This isn't just about bringing people over, this is about resettlement, resettling people so that they can begin a new life in the United Kingdom.
If we don't do it quickly, they might not be alive.
Well, we are working quickly on this.
So why not 20,000 all at once?
Primarily because we cannot accommodate 20,000 people all in one go. We have to have this. Well, actually, I spoke to the Canadians last night, Kay, and they can't.
OK, so what did they
say?
What did they say to you?
So I will tell you now what they've
Please.
said. They have an aspiration for 20,000 people, and that also includes their locally employed staff. So we are talking about this new scheme in addition to the work that we are doing with locally employed staff and other categories that will be included in the repatriation flights that you're seeing. Currently, we're bringing back almost 1,000 people a day. And when it comes to locally employed staff, we've already brought over 2,000 people back since June this year, and we've had 13 charter flights bringing people back. So, look, this is an enormous effort, but I think also there are some really important points to just highlight right now for viewers. We can't do this on our own. No country, no government can do this on their own. So I spoke to my Five Eyes counterparts last night. We have to work together. The Americans, clearly, they are in Afghanistan. They're working with us and our military in terms of securing the airport, helping to facilitate people to get them out of Kabul, get them out of Afghanistan, and in our case, take them to different locations and then come to the UK. But the international community has to work together on this. And it's not about one country saying, we're going to do X. We're all working together to really save lives. And this is effectively what we are doing with our scheme, but also recognising the international work that we're all undertaking.
Which locations?
In terms
they're
of
coming out to separate locations and then
so America are using different bases and different stations.
What are we doing?
So we're working, we have a hub in Dubai, so that is effectively where our planes often stop to refuel, where also we do a lot of our additional checks. We have to check people before they come to the United Kingdom, so that's verification of documentations. National security checks are incredibly important.
Of course.
As a government, we must always ensure that we are bringing over people that have passed all national security checks.
Ascension Island?
So that... This is we're talking about Dubai right now, just in terms of the MOD work.
About which other areas they might be coming to?
Well, I don't. Not from our perspective. Other countries and other governments will do what they will do effectively, and that's a matter for them. But from the UK perspective, we are bringing, as you've seen, the flights come in straight from Afghanistan with refuelling stops in places like Dubai, straight over to Brize Norton.
When will the first plane carrying the Afghan refugees that we're talking about today on this scheme, when will they arrive in the UK?
Well, we're working on that because our priority right now is British nationals. We have to ensure that we get all British nationals out of Afghanistan. And alongside that, we have the locally employed staff. And over the last 3 weeks, we've been adding to categories as well of other individuals who are vulnerable, who are, yes, those that have been locally employed, not just working with the military, but also, for example, other categories, people that have worked with NGOs, civil society. There are many, many others, including, family dependents. So we've been working very hard. They have been our focus. And as I've already said, Kay, our plans right now, they are being developed because we have to ensure that we've got the accommodation for them when they come here, and that also we have the right civil society partners to ensure that this scheme comes together.
When do you anticipate the people that we're talking about right now, these Afghan refugees, as part of the 20,000 in total, when do you expect the first of those to arrive in the UK?
Well, we're working through that right now. I'm not going to give you a date, but
you don't know at this stage.
Well, it's not
a
case
to say you don't know if you don't.
Well, actually, we're working through it, so I'm not going to give a date and pluck one out of thin air. We're working with partners, and you've already heard me saying there'll be a call to local authorities around the country and many other partners that have experience. I think it's important to say, as a country, we've done phenomenal work when it comes to resettlement schemes. When you look at the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Scheme as well, that included community sponsorship, all sorts of third-party organisations in communities that welcome refugees, resettle them, but also we have to put the welfare support, the education support, and all the other wraparound support services, and that's what we're working on right now.
So how are we going to get these people out of Afghanistan, given that the Taliban say that they don't want any Afghans to leave the country?
Well, I think, look...
Or are they not people that are in Afghanistan?
No, this is an international effort. First of all, I think we have to have some perspective here. We've all seen the scenes in terms of what is going on the ground. This is a very fluid situation. We have military forces on the ground and, it's the UK forces, armed forces, as well as the US. And there are other partners as well we are working with in terms of facilitating people to get them, through into Kabul. Well, this is an international effort. Okay, this is my point. It's not about the Taliban saying that they're not allowing us to take them, because that's inaccurate. That is absolutely inaccurate right now. We are working internationally through our partners.
That's what the Taliban have said.
Well, the Taliban are saying certain things. We can see right now we're working on the ground to get people. Afghan nationals are on flights every single day, Kay. They are coming through. They're landing at Brize Norton along with British nationals. So they are coming through. It is a logistical operation through military partners and other partners on the ground to ensure that we get people out, and there are plans in place to do that. So this is not clinical at all. This is difficult. It is involving a lot of resource on the ground.
Of course, and it's a very complicated, fluid situation.
But it's also a fluid situation.
Yes, indeed. What about the Afghan nationals who've managed to leave the country and go to third-party countries like, I don't know, Pakistan? Will they be counted as part of these 20,000?
Well, look, we're going to work across the board and we're working with all international partners. So you'll be very aware. You've just raised Pakistan. Our Prime Minister has already been in touch with Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. we have to look at all of this now, not just from the... I mean, Afghanistan is incredibly important, but regional stability and security in the region. So Pakistan does not want instability in their own country. So this is my point about international cooperation and collaboration. We are working, we are in touch with all our allies. Okay. It's important that we are united and coordinated in our collective efforts to get people out, not just of Afghanistan, but people who need protection, people who are fleeing oppression, persecution, whose lives are at risk, and that does take an international effort. Okay. Let me just say now, the British government will work with every partner to ensure that we can do the right thing by those that need our help and support.
Does that include the Taliban?
Well, we have to work internationally in terms of cooperation. We'll work with all our allies. We'll work with all our allies to ensure... You've already heard me speak and reference certain countries. So I've mentioned Pakistan, I've mentioned Canada, Five Eyes. So I was speaking to my Five Eyes counterparts.
Are they
well, we have to work with all partners, international partners, I should say,
are they our partners?
That have worked in the region to bring stability and security and to bring protection. Let me ask about and we will continue to do that to also help to save
If I may,
lives.
we only have a limited amount of time. What about the Afghan nationals who've recently crossed the Channel and have found themselves seeking asylum in the UK? Could they be part of the 20,000?
Well, I'm speaking very specifically about...
No, they're not.
If I can just, without jumping to conclusions, Claire, I've already said that we're working on this scheme. Our priority right now, with the new scheme, for the 5,000 specifically, we do want to prioritise women, girls and the most vulnerable, persecuted minorities. When it comes to others that have come through illegal migration routes, we will have to look at those cases in a way in which we do anyway, through the asylum system. So we are reforming the asylum system. But there's an important point to make here right now. When the world and when we see what we are seeing in Afghanistan, when we see harrowing scenes, when we know that there is a humanitarian crisis unfolding in front of us, it's right that we create bespoke routes, humanitarian routes to protect lives.
But those our government fled across the Channel and are now seeking asylum from Afghanistan. They did that. Of course, they haven't got stuck in Afghanistan.
Kay, there is a distinction between those illegal routes where people have been trafficked through, gangs and criminal activities. Well, if I may say so, you won't know the background to many of those cases, and these are people that have come through illegally. Currently, we are creating a new bespoke scheme, which, rightly so, focuses on women and girls. Many of those women and girls are minorities, are pushed aside, as we have seen, historically in Afghanistan, but also when it comes to claiming asylum in many countries. And if I may finally just say, on people that have come to the United Kingdom legally, they're also travelling through many safe countries, through EU member states. And I am calling on all my international counterparts, other interior ministers, to work collectively together to take responsibility on this.
With that in mind, do you agree with President Macron that Europe, I'm quoting him, can't bear the consequences and we need to protect ourselves against migration?
Well, President Macron, will make those types of comments.
Do you agree with him?
Well, what I would say, though, there is a crisis. There is a humanitarian crisis. The United Kingdom is creating new humanitarian routes to ensure that we can save lives and protect people. Within Europe, there is so much more that the EU Commission can do and could do in terms of stopping irregular migration and creating safe and legal routes. And
do you disagree with him?
To be very frank, I've also been persuading and speaking to other EU member states over recent months to effectively ask them to do much more on the humanitarian side and support the creation of safe and legal routes which could stem flows of illegal migration.
You were talking about the different scheme as well that involves the interpreters and third-party contractors. Johnny Mercer, one of your MPs, says that the figure of 5,000 doesn't even touch the sides. He says it's something like 20,000 people who should be caught up in that scheme. How do we choose which 15,000 to leave behind? Well,
I think, first of all, this is a scheme that has been developed in conjunction with the MOD and the Home Office. Ben Wallace and I have worked together on this, and this is a scheme that was announced in April. And as you've already heard me say, since June, the 22nd of June, up until last week, we brought over 2,000 people. So these are locally employed staff. And other countries are doing exactly the same with LES schemes. Now, the MOD have their own processes. They know exactly who they've been working with, translators, interpreters, and there'll be many others as well in terms of resilient staff on the ground. What I would say is that the MOD have been incredible in terms of the scheme, the development of the scheme, and we support that, obviously, in terms of documentation and giving people the status, recognising them, the checks to then come to the United Kingdom.
Well, actually,
Kay,
20,000.
But if you've heard what I've said already...
I'm listening to every syllable.
That scheme has been expanded.
Yeah.
So there are
how many
more
will it be?
categories. There'll be more than 5,000. We're already seeing more than 5,000.
Will it be 10,000?
There could be up to 10,000.
But not 20,000.
So there
what
could be up
happens
to
the other
10,000. So let me just be clear about this. There could be up to 10,000. We are expanding categories right now of people, and we're working with the MOD on the ground. We're working with partners on the ground to identify these individuals, and importantly...
So there could be more than 10,000?
There could be. There absolutely could be.
Okay,
and if you think about the flights that we're seeing on a daily basis with up to 1,000 people coming back, you can see that more and more people... We are working night and day.
On that one.
We have people... We're being very fluid and very flexible.
I'm sure Johnny must
and also, in addition to that, when you think about the additional staff, we've got the MOD, the military teams on the ground. I'm sending in Home Office officials. We put Border Force officials into the region to help support this scheme as well.
Okay.
So we're being very fluid, and we're recognising the change in nature and the landscape of what is going on. This is not clear-cut, it's not binary, it's not clinical at all.
I'm sure
we're doing everything possible to ensure that we can save lives and recognise that there are many individuals whose lives are at risk right now because, quite frankly, they've stood by us. They've stood by our country over the last 20 years, and we are working night and day to do the right thing to try and protect them and bring them to the United Kingdom.
We're almost out of time. I know you have an awful lot of people to talk to this morning, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Let me ask you quickly before I let you go. As a woman, as well as a politician, but primarily as a woman, you heard what the Taliban were saying yesterday. How much of what they said did you believe?
Well, not just
particularly when it comes to women.
Well,
they were saying that women.
Let's put everything about the Taliban into context when it comes to women. And I have been to Afghanistan, and I have seen how the level of oppression that women and girls have been subjected to in Afghanistan. And look, one of the strongest aspects of all our work and the British government's commitment and the international community's commitment over the last 20 years, there's no question been the work around women and girls. It's been extraordinary.
Was it all for nothing, though?
We are doing the right thing, in my view. Through the new routes that we are creating, we're putting women and girls and vulnerable people first. It will, for anybody that has served in Afghanistan, people and also in the international community that have been there, they will totally recognise just the level of oppression, the fear and persecution that women have been subject to, and girls. And we want to prevent that, which is why you'll see from the Prime Minister, you'll hear from the Prime Minister today. And I worked with the Prime Minister when he was Foreign Secretary. I saw the commitment that he gave to women and girls. In Afghanistan and around the world, we stand by all the work that we have put in place, the protections, and we are committed to doing so much more. So I think, you know, the Taliban's actions will...
You so emotional?
I've seen it. I've absolutely seen in Afghanistan the level of oppression and persecution of women and girls. And it's unspeakable.
Are we doing the right thing by pulling out our troops following the United States?
Well, we are where we are, Kay. Look, we are where we are on all of this. And our objective right now, as a government, is to save lives and do the right thing when it comes to the humanitarian approach that we take. But I think, and I recognise this in many, many ways. I've been to refugee camps in Jordan, in Lebanon. We've seen the conflict, the level of conflict that Afghanistan, the destabilisation that we have all witnessed over the last 20 years.
Okay.
It is appalling. We want to save lives. We stand by that. We stand by those women and girls who've been subject to oppression and persecution. And my final point is the international community. This is an enormous moment for the international community. It was only, 7, 8 years ago we saw what happened in Syria. We have to work together. And it's part of my own plea to my colleagues within the Five Eyes community last night as well. We have to speak with one voice. We have to work together. We have to support each other. No country can deliver humanitarian support or support for women and girls. We can't do it on our own. We have to absolutely stick together and work together to save lives and protect those Afghan nationals whose lives are at risk.
I have to let you go. Are you OK? Thanks for joining us. Let's take you to RAF Bryce Norton. Aisha standing by for us. Hello to you, Aisha. Expecting more flights in today?
Yeah, that's right. Expect more flights today and over the next few days as well. We've seen hundreds of people arrive since the weekend, and the most recent flight touched down here last night. It arrived at RAF Bryce Norton at around 11 p.m. and it was an RAF Voyager carrying not only British nationals but Afghan nationals as well. And we expect to see another flight arrive today. Around 350 more people expected within the next 24 hours as well. Now, the British Armed Forces are hoping to evacuate between 6,000 to 7,000 people from Afghanistan, and that includes British nationals as well as selected Afghans as well, people who have previously worked with British forces. And we know that more troops were also deployed from here to go and assist the evacuation and to help maintain control at Kabul airport.
OK, thank you. Still to come on the programme for you, 7:30, we'll be joined from Pakistan by Ahmad Wali Masood, Afghanistan's former ambassador to the UK. 7:45, we'll speak to historian Sir Anthony Selden to discuss the significance of Parliament's emergency sitting today. And at 8:30, we'll get Labour's view on the Afghan resettlement scheme when I'm joined by the Shadow Foreign Secretary Lisa Nandy. Taliban has given the first news conference since taking power, promising an amnesty for those who had opposed them and saying women's rights will be respected. As the group's leaders arrived in Afghanistan from exile in Qatar, they asked for the people and the international community to trust them and their new Islamic emirate. Meanwhile, in the West, Boris Johnson and Joe Biden spoke over the telephone and made plans to hold a virtual G7 meeting next week. Our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey reports from Kabul.
It wouldn't be remarkable if it wasn't for the fact that this is a Taliban press conference. 20 years ago, TV was banned here. Anyone caught even watching was arrested and punished. Now, in the grand surroundings of the country's presidential palace, in front of a white Taliban flag, they effectively announced the new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Their leadership is trying to convince the world that they are new Taliban, rebranded to play a role in the international community.
We assure the people of Kabul that there will be no excesses against them and they will live in peace. Afghans have given great sacrifices for the establishment of an Islamic government, and they have the right to implement Sharia Islamic government in Afghanistan.
Questions as well from the media, and the first to a female journalist in an open setting, unheard of. Her question, women's rights.
What assurances can you give to women and girls that their rights will be protected?
We recognize the rights of the women which Islam gave them. Women can work, they can go to the school, they can work in schools, they can work in hospitals. We assure the world that there will be no excesses against the women, and everything will be done under the Islamic laws.
The Taliban vow to uphold women's rights, but within the definition of what they deem to be compatible with Sharia law. Clearly, they're trying to be reassuring to a sceptical world, but they are ticking important boxes, like observing the sovereign status of diplomatic missions.
We assure the entire world, the people of Kabul, diplomats living in Kabul, the world bodies, the NGOs, all the organizations that from now on, no one will be threatened and there will be no access against anybody.
Sure enough, the now abandoned British embassy, a large wall complex these days, is locked and guarded. Humvees parked outside and apparently at least untouched. Across Kabul, the Taliban continue patrolling the streets in their familiar pickup trucks. They're here to keep order, but they allowed another first. A women's rights rally. This is frankly astonishing, mainly because it wasn't broken up as they chanted slogans like "Don't kill women" and "Afghan women exist." This is all in stark contrast to the chaos in the airport district of the city as people try to make their escape. They're determined to get inside the airport, but it is terribly dangerous. Inside, the repatriation flights are underway, people waiting on the apron to be loaded onto transporter planes.
These are all just abandoned weapons.
The breakdown of order here is all too clear. This an arms store that's been simply abandoned.
I could just grab an AK if I wanted one.
As the new government takes shape, the men who will lead it arrived in Kandahar from their mission in Qatar. The final piece in the jigsaw of the new regime. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Kabul.
Our Middle East correspondent Ali Bunkle joining us now. Hello to you, Alistair. We were hearing from the Home Secretary. I'm sure you caught a lot of what she had to say. No detail yet as to the 20,000 people that will be becoming part of this new repatriation scheme, but increasing the number that can come with interpreters, families and third-party workers.
And she seemed to suggest to you that there would be some flexibility in that. I think that if more people were identified on the ground in Kabul by the British military, then the Home Office would be open to increasing the number that they'd already set of around or up to around 10,000 Afghans to come to this country. There is pressure on the Home Office to make sure that they are sympathetic to the plight, particularly of those Afghans who have worked alongside and for the British government in various different forms over the last 20 years, particularly in the back of headlines that suggested that the Home Office was trying to restrict the number of those Afghans that could come to the UK. Astonishing stuff in Kabul yesterday, as we saw in Stuart's piece. As he outlined the Taliban giving a press conference, which contrasts, does it not, with that of Joe Biden's statement that he gave to the American public just a couple of nights ago, when he didn't take any questions whatsoever. And of course, those early sort of sentiments coming from the group, they sound like the sort of thing that people want to be hearing. But I would have two major concerns. Firstly, and Stuart did touch on it, exactly how do the Taliban of 2021 interpret Sharia law, particularly with regards to female rights? Because, that is certainly a nuanced area where they could severely restrict the liberties of women once again. And my second sort of concern is that that's what we're hearing from the Taliban out of Kabul, out of the centre. But if history in Afghanistan has told us anything, it is almost impossible to govern the country from a central position, such as the tribal framework and matrix of Afghanistan. And, I wonder how different regional and local tribes will interpret their version of what the Taliban want. As Joseph Borrell, the EU's top diplomat, said, they look the same, they just speak better English.
OK, thank you. Time for a look at this morning's other main stories for you so far. Gas supplies have been turned off to 50,000 homes in California, where huge fires are still raging. At least 2 people have been injured, leading to evacuation orders for thousands of residents and tourists in El Dorado County. The Caldor fire, which started over the weekend, has more than doubled in size in the last 2 days. A 43-year-old man has been charged in connection with a social media message posted after England's defeat in the Euro 2020 final. Scott McCluskey from Runcorn in Cheshire will appear in court next month. The police said the social media post was written on the 12th of July, the day after England lost to Italy at Wembley. Officials in Haiti say the number of people known to have died following Saturday's earthquake has risen to 1941. The crisis has been made worse by a tropical storm, bringing a strong wind and heavy rain, and slowing aid responses to people already homeless. Weather for you at home. Here's Kirsty. Good morning, Kirsty. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Kay. The weather here looking fairly quiet over the next few days. There's quite a lot of cloud around, but a few glimmers of sunshine too.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. For many of us, it's a cloudy picture today. A west to northwesterly breeze, keeping it a little bit cool and bringing some spots of drizzly rain, mainly to western coasts and hills. Parts of eastern Scotland, northeast England, again looking best for that sunshine, and warmer here in the sunshine as well, up to 23 or 24. But elsewhere, perhaps high teens at best. There's a lot of cloud around and a few spots and bits of rain. Nothing too drastic. I think, generally speaking, it's a fairly dry, if rather cloudy picture. We have got a few brighter spells this afternoon towards parts of the southwest, but eventually we'll see some rain fringing into parts of Cork and Kerry, and that's going to push northwards through the night tonight. Now tonight, blanket of cloud pretty much everywhere, with again a few more spots of rain.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So we've been hearing from the Home Secretary within the last few moments. She says the number of interpreters and third parties who helped the Brits while they were in Afghanistan, that number will be increased to try to support as many as we can ahead of the Taliban moving in on the airport at Kabul. Could be significantly over 10,000 is what she said. We'll have more on that in just a few moments. And also speaking to Ahmed Vali Massoud, he will be joining us from, he's actually the former ambassador to the UK in Afghanistan. He's joining us in just a second. Breaking news in the last few moments. The Home Secretary has told this programme within the last few minutes that the number of Afghan interpreters offered resettlement in the UK could double to up to 10,000.
The MOD have been incredible in terms of the scheme, the development of the scheme, and we support that, obviously, in terms of documentation and giving people the status, recognising them, the checks to then come to the United Kingdom.
Well, actually, says we need 20,000.
But if you've heard what I've said already...
I'm listening there to every syllable.
That scheme has been expanded.
Yeah.
So there are more categories. There'll be more than 5,000. We're already seeing more than 5,000.
Will there be 10,000?
There could be up to 10,000.
But not 20,000.
So there could be up to
the other
10,000. So let me just be clear about this. There could be up to 10,000. We are expanding categories right now of people, and we're working with the MOD on the ground. We're working with partners on the ground to identify these individuals. And importantly...
So there could be more than 10,000?
There could be.
Wow, Tamara.
Yes, quite a significant change there from Priti Patel, because we know that the resettlement scheme that Boris Johnson will be announcing to MPs today for vulnerable women, children, religious minorities, which Priti Patel said had suffered unspeakably under the Taliban in the past, would now be resettled in the UK, is separate from the schemes that already run for locally employed staff, so interpreters, but they were also expanded, so teachers and security guards and other people who worked for Western forces in Afghanistan. Now, it was announced today that only 5,000 of them would be coming over on that scheme. Some MPs saying that leaves people who worked for the West stuck in Afghanistan at risk of reprisals. She said that if we can, it could be over 10,000 people who come over. Now, of course, this depends how much can actually been delivered, how many people can get their paperwork, get to the airport, and that's been very tricky so far. But it suggests that the aspirations for that scheme are much bigger than has been announced.
She's also quite glassy-eyed at the end. I've not seen the Home Secretary like that before when she was talking about women and girls in the region and what has happened over the last 72 hours means for them going forward.
That's right. Priti Patel is seen as a very hardliner on immigration. A lot of briefings come out of the Home Office about setting up immigration centres in other parts of the world. We know that she's had a big crackdown against migration from Calais, but she points out that she was International Development Secretary in the past. She's been to the region. She saw Syrians in refugee camps in Jordan and Lebanon, she says, living in terrible conditions, and so she says that she does understand this issue and how people have suffered.
OK, for now, Tamara, thanks very much. Tomorrow's take at 9 o'clock.
See you then.
This morning. Thank you, including what the Home Secretary had to say about President Macron. Before that, in their first televised news conference yesterday, we heard from the Taliban. They said Afghanistan is now emancipated and claimed that everyone is forgiven. But thousands of people are still attempting to flee the regime, triggering what could be another refugee crisis. Joining us now is Ahmed Vali Massoud, Afghanistan's former ambassador to the UK. He flew to Pakistan for talks with his country's political leaders on Sunday. Joins us from Islamabad right now. Hello to you, sir. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Do you believe the Taliban when they say they have changed?
Well, unfortunately, they have not shown that they have changed, because we are hearing the news even today. They have gone to different parts of the city in Kabul to broke people's houses. And more than any other day, today is really kind of very violent. Everywhere spreading up in different cities, in Mazar, in Kabul, in different cities. Unfortunately, that's not what we see.
What do we see? What are we seeing? Because they say they want a peaceful transition.
Well, we hope to. Everybody hopes so. Because the first day that they came, people are scared. You have seen on TV, across the world, in the media, and people really kind of very fearful. And so far, they have not shown that they are kind of for a smooth transition. We hope probably they may say that, well, it's still the dust is high. Let's the dust to calm down, then we can do that one. But we hope that their squads and their groups should stop kind of violating people's house and property, to go inside different houses to broke that one. We hope to stop that one. In Bamiyan they did today, in Bazar they did, in Kabul they did. So everywhere that they can reach, they can do that one. So that's on the contrary, what they did, that's a different contrast, really.
How worried are you, how anxious are you for the fate of those that worked with the Allied forces during the occupation, or however you want to call it, the war, the conflict in Afghanistan?
Well, we are worried about the fate of every Afghans, not only those ones, but every other Afghans as well, because it's not that they will be in kind of, they should be fearful. A lot of Afghans, millions of Afghans, they are fearful. So they are kind of very much worried about the situation, about their reprisal, about their revenge, about their many other things, really. Everyone is very fearful.
It does appear, though, I mean, there's a bit of chaos in Kabul at the moment. There are roadblocks in place, but there hasn't been the bloodshed that had been feared.
Well, that's a good sign that the bloodshed has not been done. That's a very good sign, really. We hope that it should not be done in the future or in a few days' time or weeks ahead. But what's important now that they should stop the violence. I mean, they are supposed to be emirate, and they're supposed to be responsible for the safety of the people. So they themselves should not really kind of violate whatever they have agreed, whatever they have announced to the world community.
A power vacuum appears to be in place, at least for now. The Taliban are very keen to fill that. But one looks towards Russia and also towards China and wonder whether they are keen to do deals with the Taliban. What's your interpretation, given that you know the region so well?
Well, I mean, they have already signaled that they can do something. Somehow they have signaled out that they may deal with the Taliban, but it's still it's not known, because we have to really kind of wait and see ahead, the days ahead, what exactly is their reaction. They may really try to do so because they are big powers in the region. But let me say that in the region, that's not the only two powers. There are many very active players in the regions, but each of them have got their own interests, their own ideas, their own roadmap. So let's see how exactly they all can come in some sort of consensus to really deliver peace for Afghanistan. Because don't forget that for peace in Afghanistan, the first thing is that all ethnicities in Afghanistan have reached some sort of consensus on a mechanism through which every Afghan should really kind of determine their future. That's the first thing. And the second thing, those countries in the region, in extra region, they have to reach consensus on Afghanistan that, well, we can all help Afghanistan without having a hidden agenda or interfering or something like that. This is the two pillars that has to go together. If that doesn't happen, then Afghanistan will never see peace. But the first and important, the priority for Afghanistan is that we really have to have a system through which all ethnicities are involved, especially if we can have a political system through a kind of decentralized mechanism. So every part of Afghanistan can live with their own values under one Afghanistan. That's the best option that we can think of.
OK, from what you're saying and from conversations that I've had with others over the last 72 hours, there is a real concern about civil war in your country. Would you agree?
Of course. I mean, at the moment, you see, the Taliban has come to the palace by force. They have not yet reached the hearts and minds of the people. So it's a long way before we really say that everything has settled down. So there's a possibility of everything in Afghanistan.
Talk to me about your brother, if you would, Ahmed Shah Massoud, a national hero in Afghanistan. For those who don't know him, tell us about him.
Well, he wanted Afghanistan for Afghanistan. He grew with the people of Afghanistan. He fought during jihad against the Russian invasion. Then he fought against the terrorism, of course, against the Taliban as well. Then at the end of the day, he was assassinated by two terrorists which belonged to two Arab terrorists who came and just blew him up. And he stayed by all force of the Taliban. He stayed in the northeast of Afghanistan. He really resisted the Taliban. He really resisted the terrorists. And he was kind of believed in Afghanistan. He believed in today's democracy. He believed in election. He believed in the human right, woman right, and democracy. All of that he believed. That's why that he was kind of very iconic figure inside Afghanistan and in the region. So that is why now he is not there. And one of the reasons why there is a comeback of this situation, chaotic situation, because he's not there. Despite that the world community helped Dr. Ghani to do so, but unfortunately Dr. Ghani was a corrupt government. He had a corrupt government, and the United States really kind of imposed Dr. Ghani in Afghanistan, and that's the reason, and that's the result that we have seen in Afghanistan.
When will you return to Afghanistan, do you think?
Well, we are at the moment in talks. Hopefully, once we finish the talk, then we all the delegation have to consult, and then we can decide.
Okay, and a thought for the women and girls in Afghanistan. Today, we're being told that they can be educated up to university level. I'm not sure what happens to them after that. And also, I think I'm right in saying the Taliban said yesterday that they will have rights under Sharia law. Just remind us what rights women have under Sharia law.
Well, we have seen their restrict Sharia law in the past. The Taliban have ruled Afghanistan for a few years. So we could see that the girls and the women were deprived from education. If only the Taliban stayed there, of course, today we did not have an educated women, uneducated girls there. Unfortunately, this is the same Taliban, although they may promise, like they promised that they will not kind of, they have announced the general amnesty, but they violated the House of the People. The same way they are saying that, well, we will respect the right of the woman. I'm pretty sure that their Sharia law would not allow the woman to do what exactly they desire to do. So that's a very unfortunate scenario. But it's still, let me, I mean, keep our finger crossed. Let's see what happens, because it's not possible that the Emirate in Afghanistan can work. It's not possible that the very restrict interpretation of Sharia in Afghanistan would work, because Afghanistan for 20 years have seen a new world. So we have got the 70% of young population. We have got the women of Afghanistan. We have got civil society. All of them really that belong to geography of resistance against the value of the Taliban. So therefore, it's not easy for the Taliban to contain all of them like the past. So therefore, at the end, the conclusion is that Afghanistan problem is a political problem. So therefore, that version of the Taliban cannot really provide the need of the Afghan people.
Good to talk to you. Keep well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Still to come, we speak to the historian Sir Anthony Seldon to discuss the significance of this morning's recall of Parliament. Parliament's been recalled to debate the situation in Afghanistan 3 days after the Taliban took Kabul. It's the first time MPs' summer break has been interrupted for a very long time when they debated the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Do you remember when that was? Well, joining us now is the historian Sir Anthony Seldon, who certainly will. He'll be explaining to us where he is shortly. But before all of that, it's good to see you, Sir Anthony. Thanks for joining us. Parliament being recalled, not that common really in the summer.
Not that common, Kay. Since 1948, there have been 34 times. It tends to be at moments of great national significance or international crises. So crises over Korea, Suez, Northern Ireland, 9/11, the Iraq War, and now Afghanistan. Or it's Kay for times like the death of major figures, most recently the Duke of Edinburgh, Margaret Thatcher in 2013, the Labour MP Joe Cox, or moments of big domestic importance, like the Brexit legislation on the 30th of December last year, or indeed COVID regulations in January. So really big moments, Kay. Not very popular. MPs think they deserve, and they do, a summer holiday with their families. It means trudging back to them, breaking off their family holidays.
And what is the point, other than it being symbolic? Because there's no vote today, I don't think.
There's unlikely to be a vote today. It's a chance, really, for people to have their say, to acknowledge that this is a major moment for British history, for the families of those soldiers who've never come back alive. And it's a major political moment 20 years after almost 9/11. So many British deaths, so many international deaths, so much suffering. What was it all for? What can we take away? What consolation and closure is there? And a sense really across the spectrum that this is too big a subject not for Parliament, both House of Lords and House of Commons, not to have a say on.
So tell me about the mechanics. Who authorises it? Who decides how long the debate is going to be? Who decides whether there's going to be a vote or not at the end?
Well, the House of Commons is not the Prime Minister's. It is the MPs themselves in the form of Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, very powerful figure of the House of Commons. It is the Speaker's job to recall Parliament, but can only do so since 2001 on the advice of ministers and government. So that's quite a sensitive subject. There'll be about 5 hours of debate in the House of Commons, meeting at 9:30 today, opened by the Prime Minister. House of Lords, some 120 Lords want to speak. They're going to be talking starting at the more leisurely hour of 11 a.m.
Sir Anthony, tell us about why you are in France today.
Well, I'm walking from the Swiss border, where the Western Front in the First World War began, 1,000 kilometres to the English Channel. This was a dream of a British soldier who wrote to his headmaster about, after the war, he wanted to see created a path for peace along the line of the Western Front where some 8 million soldiers died, as a memorial for those who died. And just behind me, Kay, you can see a memorial of a father telling his children. There's a book which is on his lap, and it's a book that says 1914 to 1918, and he is telling them about the war and what the war was about. And that's, of course, a poignant question with the Iraq debate today. Many people asking the Afghanistan debate today, what was the Afghanistan war 20 years all about?
Okay. Good luck. How far are you? How much further do you have to go?
750 kilometres to go. And along the way, so many cemeteries and memorials to war. So this is a walk for peace, a reminder of where war leads.
Okay. Hopefully you'll be able to touch in with us from time to time and let us know how you're getting on. It would be great to hear from you.
I'd love to do that, Kay. Thank you.
Okay, Sir Anthony, thank you. And thanks for your expertise about what's going to happen in the chamber just across the road from us later on today. Thanks for now. Keep well. Thank you.